Good morning again. I would like to now introduce the session, the Strategic Plan 2021 to 2024. And as you know, we have kicked off a new strategic plan this year, and it is very, very important that we are fully informed of this plan, as the success of the entire organization is dependent on all of us working in unison. And the only way we can achieve this is by fully understanding and using our agreed plan that we put together. As you know, we're all involved in the strategic plan mounting of it. It is for this reason we're kicking off this conference with a formal session on the plan. And please help me welcome the person that is leading this plan is Susan Masila, who is our Manager, Global Development and Government Relations. Thank you, Susan. You may proceed.
Please unmute yourself, Susan.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Susan, please proceed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Charles. I was just mentioning that I feel like Dr. Dow has summarized my presentations for the day, but I will try to not to dilute his message. So, yeah, good morning, good afternoon from wherever you are in the region. It's really exciting to connect with you again and thankful for your time. As Charles mentioned, in this session, we are going to remind ourselves of the new strategic plan because we had gone through it the first time last year, which runs from 2021 to 2024. And specifically for this session, we'll try to go a little bit deeper and reflect on the high priorities areas for this year. And to kick us off is a short video.
Special Olympics shows the world the talents of people with intellectual disabilities, creating friendships and demonstrating the best of the human spirit. And Special Olympics has a vision of a world that's inclusive for all, because we believe in the power of sports to help everyone live active, healthy, and fulfilling lives. Why do we do what we do? We want our athletes to learn skills, be fit, and feel confident. And just as important, we want our athletes, their families, and other members of our community to live happy and fulfilled lives. We want people without disabilities to respect and value our athletes, just like everyone else. We want to see our communities and local organizations like sports groups, schools, health providers, and companies become more inclusive. Our strategic plan has two main goals. One, improve and expand local participation in sports and other activities to bring meaningful inclusion to communities. And two, reach more people and make it easier for everyone to participate through technology. We'll meet these goals by making quality and outreach better through our local programs. We'll empower athlete leaders and other leaders to create more inclusion in their communities. We'll also work with partners to make sure that the way we do things and the places where we do them are always inclusive to people of all abilities. To support all of this, we will use digital technology, find new and different sources of revenue, improve awareness of Special Olympics, and set high standards for how we do our work. But we can't do it without our greater community. Together, we will build a more sustainable world where everyone enjoys the power of sport well-being, and true inclusion. To learn more and join the movement, visit SpecialOlympics.org. Special Olympics shows the world the talents of people with intellectual disabilities, creating friendships.
Thank you. So to start us off in the strategic plan is our vision. We want to remind ourselves what is the vision for this plan. And as the video tells us, there's Special Olympics and visions.
Alors, comme il apparaît clairement, il faut qu'il m'assigne.
Sorry. Special Olympic and visions are long-term sustainable change and achievement. Therefore, this strategic plan spans for a period of 10 years, beginning with the 2021-2024 period of implementation. Also important to note is that this vision emphasizes that sports is at the center of our work. Let me also mention that this strategic plan is linked to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Now, this is crucial because Special Olympics cannot change the world alone. Organizations and governments all work towards improving their societies. If we work in alignment, change will take place faster and will be more sustainable. For more information on the Sustainable Development Goals, you will find additional information in the resources. We will not go into each of the Sustainable Development Goals now. But also in the vision, it's also important to note that though we've had a different mission from the last strategic plan, the mission has not changed. It's still the same as it was in 1968. Next slide. I believe we've all interacted with the new strategic plan and are all familiar with our goals, strategies, and enablers. Therefore, in this session, we'll not go into each of the strategy in a lot of details. But to remind ourselves, we have two goals in this new strategic plan, which are Goal A, improve local sports participation and well-being to strengthen communities. And Goal B, remove barriers to inclusion and expand reach through digital technology. Now, these goals are supported by three strategies, namely, Strategy 1, improve quality and reach of local programming. Strategy 2, empower athlete leaders and other change makers. And Strategy 3, foster inclusive practices and settings. And we also have 4 enablers that aim to facilitate the achievement of these goals. And these are Enabler 1, digitize the movement. Enabler 2, diversify revenue. Enabler 3, build the brand. And Enabler 4, drive excellence. Now, the key takeaway in this strategic plan is that, number 1, we can plan and implement initiatives that focus on improving the well-being of our athletes, and at the same time, influence the external community to be more inclusive of persons with intellectual disabilities. Number 2, these strategies are cross-functional. For example, you can have a healthy athlete screening, a youth leadership program, and an engagement with the community during a local sports competition. And therefore, that one event can be able to help us implement all the strategies. Number 3, this plan clarifies what is needed in order to implement the strategies and to achieve the overall goals. And these are the enablers. The 4 enablers interact with each other and ensure quality and reach. Next slide. I know we've all have an idea of the game of football. Some of us are diehard fans. Some of us are critical analytics. And there are those of us who just wonder why 22 men would chase a piece of leather for 90 minutes, or women for that matter. Anyway, assume you are the coach of your local football team. Would kicking the ball for 20 minutes without scoring a goal achieve the best result for your team? Okay, you can use the chat box to tell us how this would be for your team. Anyway, I don't think kicking the ball for 20 minutes without a score would be a good outcome for anybody's team. And this is so for Special Olympics. If our work does not achieve outcomes that bring sustainable change in the lives of people with ID, then we will not have achieved our vision. The outcomes will be measured via evaluations. At this point, we've not started measuring. However, Special Olympics International will develop tools which we'll share with you once they are ready. So to summarize our outcomes, we have 4 outcomes in this strategic plan. And these are: 1, athletes improve physical well-being, skills, fitness, and health. 2, athletes, teammates, families, volunteers, and others improve social and emotional well-being. 3, people without disabilities behave more inclusively. And 4, organizations are more inclusive through our work and the influence of our own athletes. Next slide. Before we discuss the 2 phases of the strategic plan, let us pause for a moment and take a poll. The poll is very simple. The question reads, have you started implementing the 2021-2024 strategic plan? Can we have the poll on? Sorry, if we don't have the poll, we'll go straight. Okay, yeah, we have the poll is on. So the question reads, have you started implementing the 2021-2024 strategic plan? Thank you. I can see people have answered. Thank you. We have 40 seconds to complete this poll. Wow. Almost 100% of us have started. That's a good sign. Yes, let's keep the responses coming so that we can have an idea where we are with the strategic plan as a region. Remember, this poll is anonymous, so don't be afraid. Romy, once we are through with our 40 seconds, kindly stop the poll. Thank you, Romy. Now we have the results of the poll. We are not doing very bad. We can see almost more than 70% of us have started the poll. Now, as I mentioned, first of all, there is no right or wrong answer to this poll. But what I would like to say is that for those of us who've not started the poll, kindly started the strategic plan, kindly remember that you only have 8 months before this year ends. And for those of us who've started the plan, congratulations, but also remember to put mechanisms that will help you measure the progress, monitor implementation, and also identify lessons we can learn from the implementation. Now, as Dr. Dow mentioned, and every one of us here has experienced, COVID-19 has affected our lives in so many ways. And yet, we are not out of the woods yet. Therefore, Special Olympics recognizes 2021 as a recovery year. because of how the pandemic has negatively impacted our work, we cannot simply transition from the last strategic plan, which ended in 2020, to the new one without taking a pause. And the pause is this period that we are calling 2021 is a recovery period. Next slide. Thank you. Thank you for sharing the following slide. Now, this recovery year, we are being asked to take stock of the impact of COVID-19 in our programs. Questions like, how was my program affected? What new opportunities can I see? What are some of the lessons I have learned during this period? Kindly use the chat box to tell us how the pandemic has impacted your program as we continue with this discussion. But even as we look at how this pandemic has affected us, one thing that is very clear is that though things have been tough, we are still continuing to find ways to ensure that our athletes stay safe, healthy, and active. And we can draw from so many good examples, and this gives us hope to continue with the strategic plan. Next slide. In this recovery year, Special Olympics has highlighted some key areas in the strategic plan that are of high priority, which we can start implementing in this period we are calling recovery. And these areas are Strategy 1, which talks about improve quality and reach of local programming, and Enabler 1, digitize the movement. We'll now look into the high priority areas of Strategy 1. Next slide. So in Strategy 1, we have the first target is strengthen and grow local operations, structures, and outreach. And in growth, we are being asked to assess the current level of our program's capacity, presence in urban and rural areas, opportunities to grow and strengthen opportunities we can use to grow and strengthen our local programs. We're also being asked to improve in improving quality and sustainability. We are being asked to develop structures for sustainable and expanded local programming in sports and other activities. For example, we can have family-run clubs or partnering with existing external facilities in our communities. This can help our athletes continue with their sports activities even when the schools are closed. Of course, observing the COVID-19 guidelines and precautions. In athletes retention, we are being asked to identify and address the gaps that hinder our athletes to continue participating in Special Olympics after they are done with schools. Then we are also asked to provide for athletes opportunities where they can participate in meaningful roles. And in this, we are being reminded to train, mentor, and develop athlete leaders to become coaches, officials, health messengers, and general volunteers. Next slide. The other key area is coach training. And this is, I'm calling it the second high priority area. And in this, we are being asked to target and recruit new sports coaches through sports federations and any other platform that is relevant to your program. We're also being asked to ensure continuous learning for our coaches. SOI has launched an online learning platform for our coaches. And as the year goes by, you'll be getting a lot of calls to action, especially from Desmond in this area. We're also being asked to educate and certify our coaches, including school teachers, community volunteers, so as to increase knowledge about coaching athletes with intellectual disabilities and ensure they are incorporated in other organizations. And since we all know that our coaches don't have financial compensation for the work they do for our Special Olympics, we are being asked to develop a system to appreciate and recognize our coaches. Next slide. The third high priority area is to increase frequency and quality of sports training for our athletes. And for this strategy, we are being asked, one, as we look for partnerships in local mainstream sports organizations, we are being asked to connect with them, go there, offer demonstrations, clinics, show how to conduct a unified sports event, as well as training and competition opportunities for our athletes. You can ask your partners in the local federations maybe to have a session where your athletes can also participate in competitions. Number two, we are really being asked to develop and promote league play or biweekly competitions so that our athletes can have more opportunities to compete on regular basis. Number three, we are being asked to incorporate fitness programming and weekly training with each sports training season. Our coaches need to start integrating fitness programming.
Please slow down your speaking, Susan, for our interpretation.
Thank you, Romy. And our coaches can do this by using SOI fitness model, Fit5 cards, or you can partner with your local fitness wellness organizations. Next slide. So the other high priority area in this year is enhancing local area partnerships. And in here, we are being asked to partner with local organizations that can move the needle of our priorities a little bit higher. Recruit and develop volunteers, health and education experts, and also leverage on national networks to increase local partnerships. We're also being asked to find opportunities for participation in local sports and community gatherings. And this is not just sports participation, but engage in talks, workshops, or conferences in your local community in order to expand community involvement. Next slide. The last high priority area in strategy 1 is leveraging on sports to improve health and well-being of our athletes and community. In this strategy, we are being called to inspire an athlete-led movement. I will not say much on this area because I know we have sessions in the upcoming days. Secondly, we are being asked to ensure that coach development contains topics on physical health, hydration, and nutrition. Our health and sports team will be providing more resources in this area in subsequent sessions. Number 3, we are being asked to incorporate fitness components such as proper warm-up or cool-down, healthy nutrition and hydration at competition venues to enhance participants' performance and well-being. Next slide. So the other priority area in this recovery period is digitize the movement. Now, before we go to discuss this area, I know that, and we all know that the African region experienced the biggest challenges of technology and internet accessibility. And now I would like us to take a moment and share examples of how we managed to overcome these challenges. I'll ask you to raise your hand so that we can spot you, and the host will unmute you and you can give us your answers. Kindly let's share our experiences, because your solution or how you approached this challenge may help somebody else who is already in the challenge right now. So kindly let's share our solutions. Raise your hand.
Though we don't yet have a raised hand, I would like to say that in the chat box, Special Olympics Kenya has been sharing that their in-person play and events have drastically reduced, but they have been exploring remote outreach, definitely in a blended manner, to leverage on COVID-19 impacts. So thank you for those comments, Special Olympics Kenya.
Thank you, Romy. Thank you. If we don't have other examples, we'll continue. And so we'll go to the next slide. Thank you, Special Olympics Kenya, for sharing your experiences. I know we all had something to do to make sure that we reach our athletes despite the pandemic, the lockdowns, and not being able to hold in-person activities. Now, as we've heard from that one example, what I believed we did as a region is that what we lacked in technology was compensated by zeal and determination. Because despite the challenges, we still found innovative ways to reach our athletes. And I'll share a few examples. For example, I know in one example is that some of the programs tried to find new partners who would help our athletes access internet using smartphones. And a good example is Special Olympics Nigeria, where we had some of our athletes receive phones from Nokia. Still, another good example from Special Olympics Nigeria is the use of bulk SMS feature to send COVID-19 messages to our athletes. Now, with that feature, even an athlete or a caregiver who did not have a smartphone could still receive the SMS and the message. Some of our programs use television, radio, WhatsApp, all type of innovation to reach to our athletes. The last 1 year, we've also seen an increased virtual engagement, especially virtual trainings for our coaches, youth summits, among other activities. The new normal will require us to be more creative and innovative. So let's continue to explore opportunities that will enhance quality and reach for our athletes. I know digitizing the movement will still be a challenge for the African region for a long time. But I want to encourage you with the words of our chairman, Dr. Tim Schreiber. Digitizing the movement doesn't have to look the same for everyone. So let us continue to be creative, innovative, and come up with ways to improve reach and quality for our athletes. Next slide. As I conclude, as we come to the end of this presentation, we have resources which can support you in this area. In the dashboard that Romy shared with you, you will find all the strategic plan resources in there. And if you have any challenges accessing these resources, feel free to reach out to me. You can also access the same resources from the Special Olympics website. Also remember that the regional staff are at your service as a resource, so feel free to reach out. And before we conclude, I would also want to remind you that the 2021 single year plan will be due to the region by May 10th, 2021. Please adhere to a set date. Next slide. As we come to the end of this session, let's allow ourselves to be inspired by this wise man's word, who said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend 4 hours sharpening my axe." So when we are planning, let's know we might spend so many hours in planning, but the results will be better with planning as compared to doing things without a plan. Next slide. Thank you. And before we conclude, maybe I'll ask Romy whether we have any questions.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you to all our attendees. I'd like to first read a comment from Special Olympics Zambia, where Dr. Clement Chileshi has shared with us that Special Olympics Zambia designed a home-based sending of text messages system through family members, telephone calls, and the providing of psychosocial services through partners during COVID-19. They also used megaphones in their communication in rural communities. Any response to that, Susan, before I ask our next question?
Yes, Romy, and thank you, Special Olympics Zambia, for sharing your best practice. My response, Romy, would be if they could share this best practice with the region, and maybe we can share with the other programs and see whether they can maybe borrow some ideas from that model, because I think it's a model that works and resonates very well with our communities.
Excellent. Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Special Olympics Zambia. I go now to the questions in our question and answer box. A friendly reminder to our attendees that questions can be posted in the question and answer box in either French or English, and you will be answered by the presenter or any member of the staff team. We have a question from Special Olympics Burkina Faso. The National Director, Anik Pikbogum, shares with us, Susan, could you please recap on league play that you shared within the Special Olympics strategic plan and give us more detail on that point?
Thank you, Romy. Thank you, Anik, for that question, and I think it's a good question. I might not go into all the details of a league play, but the idea is to have continuous local competitions for our athletes. You can have like in one of your sub-regions, you can have like weekly competitions between a few teams in maybe one sport. You can start with one sport. The idea is to have a structured and a continuous way of engaging our athletes in the very local competitions, instead of them waiting for the usual advancement competitions for the World Games. And for more information with this, Anik, I think I'll work with Desmond and he will reach out to you to help you if you want to start a league play in your program and for any other national director.
Excellent. Thank you, Susan. And thank you, Anik from Special Olympics Burkina Faso, for your question on league play. I have two more very useful additions in our chat box. The first from Special Olympics South Africa and their National Director, Angela Smith. Their program set up a Please Call Me option, which allowed families in need to reach out to Special Olympics South Africa during COVID lockdown and access food parcels and medical support. From Schiller from Special Olympics Rwanda, actually, first, let me ask you to respond to Special Olympics South Africa if you have any response, Susan.
Thank you, Romy. It's very exciting to hear that best practice and an example of a very good model. Congratulations, Ancila, and I think that was very timely and very innovative. And what is clicking in my mind, Romy, is that for Ancila to do that, probably she had to collaborate or partner with some of the network providers. So I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think we need to populate these best practices and see how we can all share and borrow from our national directors, and also encourage the national directors to reach out to each other and just reach out to each other and try to see what one is doing. I think that will be helpful. So I'm grateful for Special Olympics South Africa, for Ancila for sharing this, and I think I would encourage other national directors to reach out to her and see and learn how she was able to do that.
Absolutely, thank you, Susan. Our next comment comes from Special Olympics Rwanda, who shares that they used their coaches a great deal in reaching out to the families and athletes during COVID-19. Most of their coaches own smartphones, and so WhatsApp has been their main social tool for their communications. Any response, Susan?
I think my response for that example from SO Rwanda is that it just reminds us how important our coaches are. As I like to call them, they are the backbone of our movement, and I think and they are the first. I think they are the first response contact for our athletes and families as well. So I think that's a very great example, and using of WhatsApp, because we know sometimes complicated technologies don't work in our region, but WhatsApp has proved to be very effective. And thank you, Sheila, for sharing that. And I believe our other programs could have done that in one way or another. So I am grateful for these examples. And I think, Romy, we can populate them and share them with the national directors at a later date if they want to have more information.
Absolutely, that sounds like an important sharing discussion to have. I'd like to now pose another question to Susan. This one comes from Special Olympics Burundi, and it's from Innocent Koishakie. It says, digitization enabled Special Olympics Burundi to prioritize direct contact between families of athletes and coaches. How important do you think this direct contact has been? Is it more important now during COVID-19? What are some of the challenges faced? Let us know what your response is, Susan.
Wow, that's it's more than one question in one, but I'll try to summarize. Yeah, I think digitization has been more, we have seen that digitization has been more important to us during this COVID time than before, because we've all experienced lockdowns. Some of us are still in lockdowns. Physical engagement has been very difficult if we have to protect ourselves and prevent the spread. So the only option actually that has remained with us is it's the digital world, it's the digital technology. So we cannot really overestimate or even try to give the magnitude of how that has been very, very important to us. But we also know, especially in the African region, we also know that it's one of those big challenges we have as a region. Some of these challenges, we cannot, we cannot sort them as Special Olympics. Some of them are systemic. Maybe there are things our governments need to do. Some of them have an economic tie with them, like affordability of smartphones, internet, and even in areas where you can afford internet, you'll find coverage is not there. So, and that's why we are being reminded by our chairman, Dr. Tim, it doesn't have to look the same. If reaching out through Please Call Me is what works in your area, use that. If using megaphones or bulk SMS is what works in your area, use that. There's no one size fits all in terms of digitalization, and especially in the African continent. Thank you, Romy.
Great, thank you, Susan. 2 more comments have come in. Special Olympics Kenya writes that they collaborated with the Kenyan Edu TV through the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development to reach out to athletes with and without intellectual disabilities with physical fitness live. And they took this information from the Fit 5 booklets and the Fit 5 resources. Any comments there on the use of live broadcast and state television?
Romy, if I have to comment to that, I can take a whole hour, because remember, I was the driver. But anyway, for me, what that meant is that let me just say, when we all went to lockdown, everybody was trying to see how they can be able to reach out to their athletes, and that was just one way. But the bottom line, and what the takeaway from this experience from Special Olympics Kenya is leveraging on existing partners, because Special Olympics Kenya leveraged on their partnerships with the Ministry of Education, with other sports for development stakeholders. So it's just reminding us, you don't have to invent the wheel. You don't have to have all the resources you want. You can work with partners also to reach out to your athletes in whatever way you can. So that was a very good example. And thank you for Special Olympics Kenya and for Raphael for sharing that.
Great. And then we've heard from Special Olympics Senegal that they explored very successfully an idea in terms of digitization and remote outreach to mitigate accessibility issues. They did this by assembling athletes and parents in a single venue so that they could be connected online and take part in video conferences, as well as remotely attend other activities. This was much appreciated by the families and athletes, and a very efficient tool for dissemination safely during COVID-19. And that comes from Babakar Guye.
Rami, thank you for that comment. And I think it's just, I'm just looking at the examples you've just shared right now from the time we started this, taking this Q&A answer. And you can see the diversity of what our programs have been doing. You can see the innovation. And actually, we are already leading. I can say we are already leading in this digitizing the movement, despite our challenges of internet connectivity. And I really like that idea of a Special Olympics Senegal. It's a good model. And it also helps, with addressing the social isolation thing, because again, with this COVID and the social isolation and physical isolation, people felt lonely, and this could also translate to some mental health issues. So the moment the families and the athletes and the coaches can at least be able to reach out to each other, it alleviates maybe chances of experiencing some mental health issues. So I'm really glad for these experiences, and I think they are just showing us we are already leading with this digitize the movement, though we have the worst internet and technology in the world. Yeah, thank you.
Great comment, Susan. Perhaps for our final question, unless we receive any more, we have from Special Olympics Togo, the National Director, Nyeni Chagbele, that his question is to do with the challenges that programs faced before the pandemic. There were many great challenges despite, even without the use of technology, and the challenges that we have with technology and digital access in Africa region. And he asks that there be more experience sharing on these challenges, as we seem to have similar realities within Africa region and need ideas on how to combat them.
Thank you, Romy, and thank you, Ngeni. I think, Romy, I agree with Ngeni's observation, because we've had challenges before the pandemic, and pandemic brought more challenges. So, and as he says, they are more or less the same. Romy, I would want to throw this question back to you in a very polite way. Since you are our communication lead, and maybe we cannot answer it in this session, but I think it's a good food for thought from the communication, and see how we can gather these best practices and share with our programs, and maybe that way they could be able to learn from each other. You are the expert in this in the field of communication. Maybe you'll be able to give us a better idea.
Absolutely. I'll just point to my presentation that I will be making tomorrow, and thanking Ngeni for this question, because it is a great tee up for us as program leaders and as leaders of the movement of Special Olympics in Africa region. There are many channels that we have to share, not just with our own stakeholders within our countries, but with other African region programs, what we are doing, both during COVID-19 and, as you rightly say, throughout it. Without a pandemic, we still have many challenges and many creative solutions that are coming from our program leaders to address those. And I'll be focusing more on that on my session tomorrow, Mission Moments and Marketing and Communications in Africa region. And it's very true that we should be looking to our colleagues to share their best practices. We need to hear from you as the region and as the Special Olympics movement globally, but it's so important as well for you to be sharing what you're doing with your other fellow program leaders, so that they know exactly what's going on in your program and where they could perhaps replicate what you are doing. So excellent question and excellent point, Ngeni, and more to come on this tomorrow. For now, I see that as our final question, unless there are any more. One more comment that I'd like to please acknowledge from Special Olympics Lesotho. Mantateng Rasta Mako says, it's very challenging to reach athletes as they don't have mobile phones. It's only a very small percentage that we are able to reach still through coaches and program leaders. I think that's more a comment, but any response from you, Susan?
Romy, I think, as you say, it's a comment, but I think maybe SO Lesotho can reach out. As I mentioned in my presentation, the region is a resource, and I think they can reach out to us and also reach out to the other national directors who have similar challenges, especially, some countries have similar challenges, and see how they can be supported. But I think it's important they also reach out to the region if they need any support.
Thank you, Susan. That's great advice. Another comment from Special Olympics Namibia, the board chair, Julene Garis, says, greetings, Special Olympics family from the land of the brave, Namibia. We are mostly using WhatsApp, and when we are allowed to do calls, but we will add to a list of action items identifying of technologies for reaching our Special Olympics family.
Romy, I think to summarize, and if that's the last question, to summarize this discussion, and thank you, Special Olympics Namibia, for sharing the model you're using, and also for allowing us in a little bit into your plan, what you're intending to do. And following what you're saying, identify technologies. I think in digitizing the movement, we are also being called to look out to new partnerships. You see, like in sports, we try to look for new partnerships to get facilities. In health, we also work with partnerships to get healthcare volunteers, facilities, and so and so. So I think even in digitizing the movement, we are being asked to also just try to get new partners in the digital world. Our mobile networks, mobile phone networks, internet service providers, anybody who is in the technology world, in your program, I think is a potential partner for you.